All right, so I'm going to do something a little different today, Jim, and I'm just going to start this like a normal conversation, which I guess I've already blown by introducing it. But
So organic.
yeah,
It
so
feels
natural.
natural.
And I was just involved in a conversation online about, natural conversation versus prose speak. But so what's been going on with you before we get into the
This is the icebreaker.
yes. This is very Conan-esque.
You know this about me. I don't know how many people know this about me. I say hello in about 30, 40 languages, and I generally try to say hello to people in their language when I meet them, if they're not Americanized, if they're not Anglo. And
Okay.
I'm usually generally very good at telling the difference from where people are. I just met a guy in downtown Seattle. He was from India, and I could tell he was from India, so I said, Damyabad, thank you, when he opened the door. And he looked at me, he said, how did you know where I was from? And he gave me one of those. But I was just at Costco.
Hmm.
This really happened. And I know that you're not supposed to talk to Arabian women. It's generally considered not cool to engage with a stranger on the street when they're Arabic. And so I try to be polite, but I generally don't make eye contact and all that.
Hmm.
But she's working the door checking the receipt. So she's in customer service. She has to say something to me,
Well, that's
right?
also different if somebody's actually in a customer service role and you're just making small talk. I
Right.
think that's yeah.
Exactly. And so I said to her, because I didn't know where she was from. She was wearing her hijab, and I couldn't tell if she was Arabian or Turkish.
Okay.
And I've made the mistake in the past of assuming a Turkish woman was Arabian when she was Turkish. And
Okay.
so now I said to her, but I said it really quickly. I said, Assalamu alaikum or Maharab,
Hmm.
because Maharab is hello in Turkish. And she looked at me like I was an idiot because I
Hmm.
just pushed it all together into one word. So I said, Assalamu alaikum or Maharab. And she said, what? She didn't even say anything. And I said it again. And she said, you're saying two different things. I said, no, I'm asking you, which is it? And I realized once it was all over that was just such a pain in the ass that it wasn't worth it. So when I see her again at Costco, I'm just not even going to bother. But I was trying to be polite, and it bit me in the ass. And that doesn't happen a lot.
Wa-
Usually
Was
when I say hello in somebody's language, they appreciate it. But
was English her second language? Was it obvious?
yeah, she had very good English, in fact. But she
Okay.
wore the hijab.
Okay. I mean,
And
if
so,
so, my general rule of thumb would be if I see somebody wearing something like that, I'd be a lot more conservative. Like I remember one time I met there was a couple that owned a store around the corner from where I went to college that were from Saudi Arabia. But the woman kept her hair like out in the open long, and she was very friendly. And so I tried speaking a little bit of Arabic to her because I was taking Arabic classes, and she was very friendly about it. She was like, "Oh, Luga Arabia," and she started talking to me, and I barely understood anything she was saying, but she was nice about it. And so whenever I would go there, I'd try talking to her or the husband, and they were really friendly. But I think I've told this story before. At one point, there's a market here. I think it's called it's called like Anor or something, like Market of Light, and I went in there one day, and there was a guy there who looked really serious, and I said Maraba, and he just gave me like a look, like, and he shook his head and just said no, and I didn't know what that was about, but he clearly didn't like me going in there and doing that. So,
yeah.
but generally that's not the reaction that I find you get with Arabic people. I find generally they're pretty happy to hear you speak their language. Do you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
especially post 9/11, I noticed that because
Yeah.
it was sort of like it wasn't what they normally encountered. I think in the U.S. So I don't know what it's like these days, but back then I generally got positive reactions, except for that one guy at the market. But yeah, I don't know. That's a. I mean, maybe what you should have done in that case is speak in English first and
Yeah.
then
Yeah. I
try
know.
it.
It usually does not backfire on me, right? I can tell the difference between a Sikh and Pakistani and an Indian. And so when I'm saying hello in their languages, I know what I'm doing. But this was just one of the, and I was in Iowa when I ran into the Turkish woman, right?
Yeah.
So she was just excited that there was a white person that even knew how to say hello at all. and she wasn't rude about it when I got it wrong. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're from Turkey." And I knew exactly how to say hello in Turkish.
Yep.
So I fixed it just like that. But yeah, I just generally try to make people feel comfortable around me by doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I was just at a place that had a Vietnamese woman working yesterday, and she was blown away that I knew Xin Jiao. And
what is Xin Jiao?
It's hello in Vietnamese. And then how much is bao miu? Thank you is come on. Things like that.
Okay.
And I try to pick up what I can, right? It's very difficult to memorize all of that because there's so many different cultures and languages and whatever. But it's important to me. I live in a multicultural town, and I actually like the experience of walking out of say a Vietnamese restaurant, and then there's two ladies speaking Korean as they walk past me, and I can pick up a couple of terms they're using, etc. I like that. That feels comfortable for me.
I do know a little Korean just from doing Taekwondo, so I know like Ahanseo and some of the real basic stuff and some of the commands. Some of them kunyet and like all these things that they said when you had to just salute the front. And I'm butchering it, and I can count, but I don't know. Now, do you have like a book that's like how to say hello in 40 different languages, or have you just sort of amassed this knowledge?
I've just amassed it over the years.
Okay.
There was a book by Jim Starlin, the guy that used to write for Marvel Comics. He wrote Gilgamesh 2, and I read it in college, and there was some stuff in there about respecting all religions, but honoring none of them. And it really opened my mind. I was 20 years old, right? Mm-hmm. And I was just starting to get into Buddhism, and my life was changing a lot in positive ways. Mm-hmm. College was a great experience for a white trash kid like me. And I had made it my kind of agenda to learn how to say hello in as many. I can say hello in Sri Lankan. That's how many languages I can say hello in.
Okay, that's. I mean, yeah, I can only say it in a few and not very well. Jim knows. Jim does this all the time. He'll say things in PM in other languages, and I'll be like, I have no idea. Even things I should know, like stuff in French that like most Americans probably know. I don't know.
Yeah, comment ça va? Yeah. Everybody should know. Bonjour, comment ça va?
I think I've resisted learning French my whole life. Just never. I just never absorbed it. But,
so my wife hates French. So what I will do is I will not only speak French in the house, but I will do it with a southern drawl.
Okay, that's kind of interesting.
So it completely drives her nuts. Mm-hmm. Voulez-vous coucher avec moi? And then,
Jesus Christ.
Right? Yeah, that's awful.
Yeah,
right?
It sounds terrible.
So awful.
Well, it doesn't sound terrible. It just sounds so like nothing I've ever heard before,
Yeah. And so I'll do that for, a good 10, 15 minutes, rattling off as much French as I can with that accent. And she'll want to murder me.
My wife is more worldly than me. Like, we both, I think we've mentioned this, but I believe your wife is Korean. My wife is Thai. And so we have common experiences a bit around that. And my wife is more worldly than me. And she knows a lot of languages just because if you're not born in America, you have to learn other languages generally. And so when she wants to annoy me, she'll just start speaking Japanese to me or speaking a language other than Thai or English to just kind of, remind me that I don't know as many words as her. Or she'll start speaking English because they are under the English school system in Thailand. Like they learn English the way that people in England learn it. And she'll just start using English colloquialisms and saying footpath instead of sidewalk. So yeah, I don't know. But I don't know why I brought that up. But anyways, we wanted to get into a couple of different topics today. We wanted to talk about the copyright issue that emerged in our program. I had a small update on that, in fact. And also we want to talk, and this is going to be the main theme of the program, we want to talk about concept albums in metal. And so I'm assuming that's what we're talking about today. Actually, I don't know. Did we hash that over, Jim? Was that?
Yeah, we can talk about whatever. Okay. Honestly, I've been up since 2 a.m. and I'm totally wired, so I just wanted to record.
Okay, well,
take advantage of this energy.
I slept late, so I think it's a good combination. If it were the opposite, if I had not gotten enough sleep and you were all wired, it would have been a mess. But I slept till like 7:15 or something. So the copyright thing. Do you remember what happened? Is it?
Yeah. Update us.
So we did that top 20 metal album thing, and while we were doing it, we listened to really short clips. Like I'm talking 10-second clips, I think, of maybe 20-second clips, just to get a sense of the music if Jim hadn't heard it, or if I hadn't heard it, or if we needed to be reminded of what it sounded like. And we skipped around. Like there's no way that you could replace buying the album with what we were doing, right? It just and it wasn't like promotional. We were just, if anything, people were going out and buying these albums when they wouldn't have otherwise if they listened to our program. That's the only possible result that could have occurred. So we got some copyright claims. We got 3 copyright claims, and I don't want to mention who it was because I don't want to get us in trouble, or do you know what I mean? I don't want to make it worse than it is. But three different companies, and I was kind of surprised by the bands whose companies came after us. I thought it was going to be some other people, like instantly, like as soon as the episode went up. So it was obviously a software thing. They made a claim, and I there's like a bunch of different steps, and so I basically, appealed the first step. Like it wasn't the official appeal where but it was like the first step of like, well, I think this is done in error kind of thing. And apparently all the company has to do is just say, we don't accept your appeal. And then it just automatically is demonetized. And we're not monetized anyways, but we wouldn't be able to, is the result of the appeal. We wouldn't be able to monetize the videos. And so now we're at a crossroads where we now have the official appeal option. And the official appeal option, which I don't know, I'm deciding if I want to do or not. The problem with that is you risk actually having your channel taken down if you
wow.
Now the videos are still up, so I don't really care. Do you know what I mean? Like they're still letting us play the videos, we just can't monetize them. But out of principle, I kind of wanted to do that second appeal. But I don't know, I just think it's the stupidest thing in the world. Like and basically it's not even the bands, it's like the company that owns the rights to them, or like a law office or I think it's all outsourced.
Sure.
But it's really annoying that all they have to do is say, nope, we don't agree. And it kind of automatically goes to them. And then if you want to go into this real review process, you get like 5 warning pages of your channel could be taken down. And are you really, really sure you want to do this? And they try to scare you. And it just feels so one-sided. It feels like the content creators on YouTube are not, are completely at the mercy of these. And I've seen, and the thing is, for our channel, it's not a big deal. Like, for what we do, we don't really need to monetize the video. It's fine. But it's annoying when you're watching like music education channels and this kind of stuff happens. Do you know what I mean? Which we both do. And I've seen it happen. I've seen great videos of like, what makes this song interesting and great, and people will break it down, and then they can't even they're trying to praise and review the song. There's no way you could listen to that video and say, "Ooh, I'm going to not buy the album now because this guy's playing short little clips of it that are, jumping around and not giving me the full song." It's just very, I don't know. I find it frustrating, but I don't know. I figured you might have some thoughts on copyright and music, so I thought
I think what we should do. 2 days ago we recorded. Did you put it up yet?
No, I'm going to put it up today. Actually, after we record.
We recorded 2 days ago and we talked about Unleash the Archers
a
lot. We should put some of their music right now on this podcast. Because I'll bet they would love to get some exposure. I think it would be a great test to see how that band responds.
Well, here's the thing, though. It's not the band. It's going to be the label. So it'll be Napalm that would probably...
Right.
But we can do it, I mean, it's risky, obviously. We're kind of playing Russian roulette here, but
but if we just play 10 seconds and we say, here, we just think this is a great band, listen to this.
No, this is good because I actually wanted to do that yesterday, but it's better that we're doing it on an episode that we might be more comfortable jettisoning if we have to, rather. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right.
So I think that's good, and there are some things I wanted to call attention to. So why don't we? So I bought all 4 of their albums. I have them on Amazon Music, so I own the music. So why don't I do that? I'll try playing some clips of things so that people can see what I thought was so great about Unleash the Archers.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to start with Destroyer because that's the song that I was like, wow, Do you know what I mean? Like, that song really floored me, and I'll try to explain why. And this is from their first album, so the sound quality is a little bit less well mixed than their later albums, so you kind of have to, meet it halfway in that respect. But I think that the good thing about the first album is it's a little bit more unfiltered, and so you get a real sense of this is how good this band is. This isn't, there are less studio tricks involved in earlier albums, so you really get a sense of the talent. So I'll start with this song, and I'm going to skip ahead. So that was the part that, like, made me fall in love with the band. Do you know what I mean? That high note. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like that.
Yeah, let's be honest. You and I both are in love with Britney, and we want her to contact us because we want her to find out about this channel, and we want to start being fanboys and write her letters. Let's just be honest.
Well, no, okay, so that's not exactly true. What
I know it's not true.
No, so when he first showed me this band, and I, I'm a crude person sometimes. I'm not as sophisticated as Jim, and I saw. So he showed. What did you show me? The General of the Dark Army, I think, was the video you sent me.
Yeah, that or Tonight We Ride.
I think it was General of the Dark Army, and I said,
yeah.
"Oh, she's pretty," and Jim just sent a face palm right away, yeah. and I was, and the thing is,
so effing talented. The last thing in my mind when I'm listening to her voice is, "Oh, it's a good thing she's pretty."
So, but here's the thing: I wasn't saying it's a good thing she's pretty. That was just my initial reaction when I first started the thing, and it's not like it's not like I was being creepy about it. I was just saying she's pretty, and it's relevant sometimes to music because there is a visual component, and this is a band that's obviously marketing their stuff. So, in terms of her being a front person of the band, like that, having that level of charisma matters. Like, I'll give you an example. They have that song. I think is it Time Stand Still? Is that their? Yeah, they have an album called. I believe the album is Time Stand Still, but they have a video for it. And
where everybody is from different time periods.
Yeah, and have you ever seen the Survivor video? For Eye of the Tiger, where they're walking through the streets.
Yeah.
Okay. This to me seemed like a commentary on that video. Like, they're kind of doing the same thing, walking to where they're going to jam in front of Rob Halford, Dave Mustaine, and Tomi Iommi, I think. And it's not actually them; it's just like stand-ins. But they do such a better job than the Survivor video did of it. It looks like the Survivor video looks terrible when they're walking to their jam space, right? It just looks awful. They're all stiff and awkward, and you can tell that, like, videos are just sort of becoming a thing, and they don't really know what it's like to look at themselves in a music video, so they just have no self-awareness. And
right.
This is the opposite, and it's because she's charismatic and she can pull it off. And so that was, why I made that comment.
And it's clearly one of those videos where they know she's pretty, and so they're making her prettiness the focus. Everybody else, they don't dress them up to look better, right? The other guys in the band kind of look frumpy.
Well, I think that's here's the thing. I don't know, because it's not like in those, and we're kind of getting off the topic of talent, but it's not it's not like so she's never going to contact you now, Jim. But
she wrote me a letter, Brendan. Yeah, I actually have one when I bought all their CDs.
So, well, I think they write that. It's probably like one of those form letters that they write to everybody.
It probably is, yeah. But it was her signature.
Okay, but it's not like she looked pretty the same way that, like, Bruce Dickinson would look handsome. It wasn't like she was doing, she wasn't trying to be alluring.
Explaining this because I was busting your balls.
What was that?
So explaining this, I was just busting your balls.
No, I know, but I want. It's an interesting topic because the point I'm making is, that aspect of a performer can matter, and it matters with somebody like Bruce Dickinson. It matters with it's sort of like when I was my dad's in sales, right? My dad's a sales trader. And I was thinking of getting into sales at one point. And I remember noticing a lot of the people that used to come to the house that he worked with were very attractive. And so I was like, I was like, hey, Dad, can you get into sales if you're not attractive? Like, do you have to be like an attractive person to get into sales? Are you doomed to failure if you're ugly and you're in sales? And And my dad thought for a moment, and he said, no. He said, you have to be striking in some way. You know, you have to have something that you can bring to the table. Do you know what I mean? So, and I think it's kind of the same with being a front person in a band. You know, you don't have to be the most handsome person or the most beautiful person in the world. You know, there are people like Ronnie James Dio that do a great job as a front person. But Ronnie James Dio is very striking. Do you know what I mean? You do not forget what Ronnie James Dio looks like once you see him. Right. And he's got this way of carrying himself. It's almost like you took somebody who should never be a front person of a band, and they did everything in their power to work everything that God gave them. Do you know what I mean? And so,
since we're talking about this, I want to bring up that Quiet Riot is the ugliest band in creation, and nobody in that band was good looking. Ever.
And they made that part of their lyrics too. You know, like he talks about his, what do you say, his funny face in Come On Feel the Noise.
Yeah. So you say I got a funny face. It makes me money.
Yeah.
I think it's a line.
And so, and that's the thing. His face is, you remember that guy's face, right? And so, but I think for what Unleash the Archers is doing, the reason why that was important is because there's there are a lot of bands like this that try to do a kind of medieval fantasy science fiction-y thing, right? And they'll put out these videos and you just won't believe it, right? Because it just doesn't land. Like, you don't believe that this person is a warrior. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there are a few people who can do it. Bruce Dickinson, you can buy striking warrior poses, right? Brittany, you can. What's her last name? Is it Hayes? Brittany Hayes. You can believe that she's like, when she's doing the General of the Dark Army thing, you can believe that she's this kind of like doing this warrior thing, or in that Tonight We Ride video. And so I thought that's why I thought that was kind of significant.
No, it is significant. I just like to make fun of the reductionist attitude that, oh, she's pretty.
Yep.
When I work in a hobby, right, and you work in the same hobby, but I don't think you deal with it as much. I work in a hobby where we are constantly talking about how men react to women at the game table.
Yeah.
And so I am hypersensitive about it now. And I've never been that creepy guy anyway. I try to treat everybody the same, whether they're pretty or ugly. And in fact, I don't really trust most pretty people because of my experiences with them. But
that's very bigoted of you, Jim.
What's that?
That's very bigoted of you.
It is bigoted. I don't like good-looking people. That's why I work with you, because you're not good-looking. And for people that don't know, I can see Brendan. He's got his camera on, but I don't have a camera, so he can't see me.
But Jim is. You know what I want to do one day? I want to, through Google search, try to cobble together an avatar for Jim. Do you know what I mean? Just based on Jim's own descriptions of what he looks like. I think that would be a lot of fun. I don't know if Jim has hair. I don't know if he's got a beard. I don't know anything about it. So all I have is the voice, and voices often, like, I've found voices to be very unreliable for painting a picture of somebody. And I get that. And in the hobby, part of the issue is people are so awkward about it. That's really where it, we have a lot of people that don't know where the lines are. And so that's where it becomes a big issue. But I think also you can kind of go in too far. Like, I feel like our culture, nobody really knows if they're attractive in our culture, right? Like, nobody tells you when you're growing up what you look like, right? We're always very polite about it. Do you know what I mean? And so I feel like even beyond the trying not to be creepy, we have this thing about not really addressing physical appearance in any way, even though it's probably useful information to have, right? Like whether you're ugly or handsome, it's probably good to know just so you can navigate the world with that info, right? And obviously there's subjective nature to it. And it's not like...
This is a fascinating turn with this conversation.
It is, but I was thinking about this the other day. I
want to explore this more.
Well,
I really do.
I was thinking about it because, remember, I told you, I don't know if it was, it might have been before we started recording, but I remember mentioning that one of the first things I learned in Thai from my wife was how to say, "Oh, you're so beautiful," just because that's something that comes up. But they also will tell you if you're ugly. Like, one day I was working at this place called Sticky Rice, and the boss turned around and looked at me, and I had let myself go I had been doing martial arts, and I was like in tremendous physical shape, and then I just stopped training, but I kept eating all the food I was eating, and I gained about 40 pounds. And,
oh my God, that's hilarious.
And the owner's wife, the co-owner of the restaurant, she turned around, she said it in Thai, but I know what she said. She said, Brendan, you're so fat. And
right.
And I was like, whoa, like I never, like nobody in America does that, right? Like you'd never do that to somebody. But it gave me information I wouldn't have had. Do you know what I mean? I instantly started working on this problem.
It's a cultural thing. I was in Vietnam for a month, and everybody's so honest there about everything. And it's not meant to be mean-spirited. When people are telling you you're fat or you're ugly or whatever, they're just giving you information.
Yeah.
The word fat in America has somehow become this ugly term. But if you look at it in a dictionary, right, it is just a descriptor.
Yes.
There's no qualitative weight to it. Wait, that was an unfortunate pun. There's no gravitas to it beyond just describing something. If I said rotund or zaftig or what's the one?
Rotund sounds like an insult. I would say if I called
that?
somebody rotund sounds like a deliberate insult. Like that.
Yeah, but fair enough. Yeah. But if I said Rubenesque, right?
Yeah.
Those are just descriptions. They're the same word over and over. If I say hirsute instead of hairy, right? Hirsute can be taken in a number of ways. But if I say hairy, you are going to assume that I'm saying it in a negative way, even if you just haven't shaven in a while. Because we have this idea. Wow, this is so fascinating that we're going in this direction with this. I grew up in Southern California, and all my friends were Hispanic in East LA. Mm-hmm. I grew up East LA, Montebello, South Whittier, that area. And all of my friends were Hispanic, and so we just had a different communal sense of one another, and you knew if you were good looking or whatever, because the best looking people were getting the most attention. Okay. You may not tell them that they're good looking, or you may not tell other people that they're ugly, but you knew. Mm-hmm. And I think boys especially grow up, at least in my era, you grew up knowing your place in the pecking order.
Okay. No, I spent some time in Southern California, and I think there is a difference there as well, just from other parts of the country. Maybe it's all the sunshine and just the fact that, like, okay, I live on the East Coast, and we generally are not the healthiest people in the world. Do you know what I mean? Like, in the wintertime, everybody packs on a few pounds, and on every corner is a sub shop with greasy food and pizza, and like that's what people eat. But anytime I go over to California, I'm just struck by how athletic everybody is, and I think it's just the demand of. I know I'm going to be walking around without a shirt on certain days, and I don't want to, be carrying extra weight. But
the closer you live to the city, if you're north or west of the city, and you're close to the heart of the city, you're expected to be good looking. You're expected to be tall. You're expected to be in shape.
Are you saying in California or generally?
No, in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Specifically Los Angeles.
You're expected to be tall, too?
What's that?
You're expected to be tall?
Yeah, if you live on the west side of the city. Yeah.
I think that's why I had so much trouble out there, because I'm kind of short. And I remember people out there are so damn tall. Like, I had a kid in my class who was like 5'11" in the 5th grade. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, who's 5'11" in the 5th grade? And I think it's because...
Kid.
What was that? Yeah, that kid.
That kid.
Yeah. And their names, they all came from Northern European places, it sounded like. Right. But
if you live south of Los Angeles or you live east of Los Angeles, you're generally working class, and you're not expected to be good looking. You're not expected to be in shape. The further east you go from LA, the fatter people get.
Okay.
And that's a result of suburban life and the kind of food choices that are available.
We were by San Diego. We were by in Vista.
Oh, yeah. All good looking people in San Diego.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that must have been my problem. I was surrounded by good-looking people.
Especially when you're north of San Diego, right? If you're in La Jolla, that's where all the money is. Everybody has to be good-looking. So there's a certain expectation in Los Angeles, I think, and everybody knows it.
Okay.
And if you aren't good-looking enough, you're not going to get the kind of jobs that are going to promote those lifestyles. It's an unspoken truth about LA, I think.
Well, let's be honest. LA is not known for... It's known for being superficial, right? Like that's kind of it's and even when I went to San Francisco, I felt a little bit of that there. Do you know what I mean? That's like,
Yeah.
you know, so I think, you know, there's a big cultural gap there. But I think just to bring it back to the side topic that was a derailment from the original topic, you know, the word for fat in Thai is un. And so it doesn't have the, like you're saying, it doesn't have the negative connotations that it has in English. It has some of them, and it's not all roses and sunshine. Like, it's not easy to be an overweight Thai person. Do you know what I mean? Like, at least that's my impression. You know, but it doesn't feel like it's again when they're being honest about what a person looks like. It's just that they're generally more honest about that stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's just the way that, you know, just a cultural difference. But the side effect of that is everybody has a pretty clear sense of what they are and where they stand with other people. Do you know what I'm saying? Right. And I think in our culture, that's not as present. That's something because, and again, it's not even about the stuff that we were talking about in the gaming community. It's stuff that goes way deeper in the culture, like way back. Like, this is stuff I don't think we've ever really addressed. You know, we just don't. We generally don't comment on other people's appearances. Do you know what I mean? We generally consider that rude, especially if it's a negative. Do you know what I mean? Maybe if it's a positive, but if it's a negative, we would never do that. And so I don't know. I was just thinking maybe if we just sort of gave up on that and just, hey, you're ugly. You know, then the guy who's ugly knows he's ugly. Do you know what I mean? And then he's like, okay, now I know what I'm working with. Do you know what I mean? Now I can work on the charming wit to counterbalance, you know, my lack of good looks. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I get it. There's that Twilight Zone episode about it. I don't know how we're going to now segue back to concept albums.
Oh, we'll find a way. We'll find a way.
All this fat talk, but...
Well, we could just artificially break back in if you want. That would be, you know, we don't need like a smooth segue to get from topic.
That was my smooth segue.
Well, here's the thing. Does anybody even care about segues? Like honestly, do you care if a person makes a smooth transition from topic to topic? Does it affect the quality of your listening? Do you know what I mean? It's just a bow that you put on it. And do you know what I'm saying? So concept albums. We could talk about.
I think if you're listening to a professional podcast, you might want some better transitions.
This is not a professional. This is. Well,
all right. Since we've already just dry humped this.
And here's the thing.
Submission. I got to tell a story.
Okay. Well, but but I do want to mention we were going to play a bunch of clips of Unleash the Archers, and we still haven't done that. So I think once you tell your story, we should just do like 3.
Absolutely.
Okay.
People probably think we're drunk now. Wow, this is the weirdest episode of this show I've ever heard.
I think this is probably the most compelling podcast we've done.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's getting into territory we've never... Nobody would really even think to talk about. So
certainly on a metal show.
Yeah.
Wow, so I was listening to Metal Words the other day. And Jim and Brendan were talking about how bad everybody is. I don't know what that has to do with 6'8" time, but all right. So my nephew has just turned 12.
I just want to mention, it is called heavy metal, so there is a connection. So go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, just play Unleash the Archer. My story, I don't even care anymore. Just play them.
All right. So I want to play a bit of The Outlander because I think those harmonies are so amazing. So I guess I'll just start it and I'll skip ahead. I know it's choppy, but we're going to have to do a little bit of skipping ahead here and there just to avoid the copyright thing. So I'll play it for about 20 seconds, and once I get up to the 20-second mark, I'll skip it ahead. Oh, man, there's a long musical intro. I forgot about that. I'm going to skip ahead, Jim.
Professional podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
Perfect. I heard that song and I could not stop playing it. I had to keep playing it over and over and over again. And part of the reason is it doesn't sound like a normal metal song. Do you know what I mean? Like you don't normally hear metal that sounds that way. But it still was metal. It's just that it was like coming at it from like out of left field. And the harmonies are, I don't know, I just was really impressed by it. I think that metal always runs the risk of sounding like hair metal when they overindulge in harmonies. But this was just really working for me. And it's kind of unique. So I don't know.
I think it's a good song. It's not my favorite by them, but you're right. There's a certain groove to it. And even though you're not headbanging to it, you're still feeling something. You're being moved to action.
Yeah, and it's, I don't know, it just, that song, I just was like, sometimes you hear something and you're like a little bit confused by it. You're like, why am I reacting to this song the way I'm reacting? And it was just, I just kept listening to it out of fascination. I'd really love to see, like, I know you're probably never going to see this because it's not well known enough, but I'd love it if somebody could take this song on YouTube and like break it down and say like, this is what she's doing with these vocal harmonies. Do you know what I mean? This is why you like this song. Because again,
there's a lot of vocal coaches on YouTube that review songs, but they seem to review the same ones over and over again. Everybody finds out what somebody just did. Oh, Patricia did this song. I gotta do that one now.
Well, I think it's because a lot of them don't know the genre. Do you know what I mean? So they're relying on that as a guidepost. But there's I can't remember the name of the channel off the top of my head. I think it's 12 Tone, but I could be way, way off. But there's a channel that breaks down music and, you know, like and it's really visually well done, where he kind of scribbles the notes on a page in sort of a quasi-animated way. And it just kind of breaks down what's going on. So he'll do it with popular music. Like, did it with Sweet Child of Mine. Which was actually, that was the first song I learned when I started playing guitar, was the intro to Sweet Child of Mine. But he breaks down why it works, like why it's, you know, works. And, you know, it would be interesting to see them do that for this. Is there a song that you would like to play from Unleash the Archers catalog? I got all of them here.
I love Bloodline. What's the Bloodline song? What's it called? Cleanse the Bloodline.
Okay, did you want me to play from the beginning, or do you want me to start like a little
Just grab something in the middle. It's fine. It's all good.
All right. So.
And I never use that phrase. I don't know why it just came out of my mouth. It is all of it good.
Here we go. I think we stumbled on a breakdown. I'm going to skip ahead, Jim, just so we can get into the meat of the song, because I feel like we're in like a middle zone. So was that a section of the song that illustrates
what I love so much about that piece that you just played is that is a drum beat that no one would even think to try to sing over. It was so busy.
Can I play that again?
Busy in that section. What's that?
Can I play that again? Because I wasn't paying attention to the drums.
Yeah, you were paying attention.
Well, I was paying attention, but I wasn't listening to the. I can focus on like one instrument at a time usually. There's a lot of fills in that.
Keep listening, and then he keeps changing it up.
Oh, it's kind of, I get what you're saying. forget the word to describe that kind of a rhythm.
It's either a polyrhythm or it's not a blast.
No, it's but it's like the same thing from like the Terminator soundtrack. Do you know what I mean? It's like that staggered beat.
What I really sometimes don't like about their music is the mixing. Mm-hmm. Sometimes her voice gets subsumed by the rest of the music. Mm-hmm. And I think this is an example of a song where she could have used just a little bit more, but it's not so much that we can't hear her.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody's working in pretty good harmony there, but a little bit better mixing there would have really catapulted that song over the top. That said, it's still my favorite song by them. Cool. It's just so pulsing forward, and her harmonies are outstanding.
Metal always has this too. There's always this like how loud should the vocals be thing that kind of and there's almost an aesthetic that a lot of people prefer of having the vocals lower. Do you know what I mean? Like remember I sent you that Cathedral album, and you know, one of the things that album suffers from, especially on the first few tracks, is you can barely hear the vocalist. Do you know what I mean? It just is, and it's purely a result of how they mixed it. It gives it a more... go ahead.
Here's our perfect segue into concept albums. There are times when conceptually that's what you want to do, right? Bob Mould has an album called Beaster where you can barely hear his lyrics. And that's on purpose because all 5 songs are played in such a way that the distortion is what he's focusing that album on. He wants you to be in a trance throughout all 5 of those songs. And I think if you're doing an album that way, and I can't think of a heavy metal album off the top of my head at the moment, where you're doing a concept album where you want the singer to be subsumed by the rest of the music, I think it can work. I just think it's not my preferred style.
So... Yeah, no, I mean, I get that you could sort of do a I don't want to say subpar, but like you could do like in a deliberately something that would normally be considered bad for sound and do it because it fits the concept. Like I don't know if you had like a concept album that was all industrial and stuff, you might try to make the guitar sound a little bit more grating than it would normally sound, right? So, but at the end of the day, you're also still stuck with that. Like that's still the sound you're hearing, no matter how well it fits with the concept. So you know what I'm saying? Like you still got to deal with the downside of it. I don't know.
It almost feels like music's one of those things where we want experimentation, but experimentation can be so dangerous because we're going to be listening to these songs for 20 years in some cases, and you don't want that taste in your mouth 20 years later from a band that you used to love.
No, that's true. Now, what is your feeling on concept albums in metal? Do you have an opinion on them in general, or like do you like them?
In general, I love it. I think there's something to be said, and we're going to talk about Seventh Son of a Seventh Son eventually. I think there's something to be said for sitting down and not just, and we use the word theme a lot wrong, and I've talked about that before, but there's something about picking a theme, some subtext, and an overarching motif, and saying we're going to write an entire album about that, or maybe half the songs will be about that. Rush used to be fantastic at that, right? They used to be so good at coming up with a concept and making all the songs fit, and then they got tired of doing that because that was so much work.
Well, you have to compromise in order to do that. Now, is that your definition of a concept album?
I don't know that I've ever formally come up with a definition for concept album. I think maybe I should have done it before we started recording.
We could do it right now. Yeah, okay. Because well, first off, I noticed you said that we use theme wrong, and I know I probably use theme very loosely in my speaking. Right. So, what when you say that, what do you mean? Like, how do people normally use theme, and how would you prefer people use theme?
People always use theme to say, well, the theme of this movie is fantasy. Fantasy is a motif or a genre. It is not a theme.
Okay.
People will say, this is a cowboy theme at this party. No, that's a leitmotif. That's not a theme. But leitmotif sounds pretentious, so nobody's going to say I'm having a cowboy leitmotif party.
Yeah. It also sounds very dainty. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. but theme is is the culmination of all the subtext of a story. So themes in literature are things along the lines of the theme here is chaos and the struggle of man against nature, right? Those are themes. Those aren't motifs. Those aren't genres. Those aren't any of the pastiche or the veneer that we usually ascribe to the word theme. So the theme of, say, Operation Mindcrime is the struggle of the lower class to find any value or power in a society where money, drugs, and guns determine your worth, right? That's an underlying theme of that album.
Okay.
But the motif is revolution, right?
Okay. Now, I'm probably not going to be able to keep these terms straight in my head, so I'll probably just continue to annoy you by misusing themes throughout this discussion.
We don't have to use them either. But what we can just say is that concept albums are just when all the songs are tied together.
Okay, that's a good. Now you also drew a distinction between concept albums and a story concept album as well, which I think is, so sorry. So before we even get into that, I know we're going to talk about Seventh Son of a Seventh Son on a separate episode, so we shouldn't discuss that here. But we can talk about Somewhere in Time, right? Because that some people regard that as a concept album. I don't believe a lot of the band does, but
yeah, I don't know if it is. But go on.
I think it is a concept album, and I'll tell you why. But that's a song.
I'm looking it up. Go ahead.
What was that?
I'm looking it up. Go ahead.
Okay, so I mean, every single song in some way is related to time. Do you know what I mean? With the exception maybe of Sea of Madness. But I think if I had the lyrics in front of me, I still, I have a feeling there still might be some connective tissue there. But I mean, everything's about, like, everything from Caught Somewhere in Time to Wasted Years, right? Those are both very clearly connected to time. Heaven Can Wait, waiting, like the waiting part of it is connected to time. The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner. I mean, distance and time are pretty connected, I think. Okay, maybe Stranger in a Strange Land. I don't know. It's been a while since I've read the book, and I think that might be another song that doesn't cleanly connect to time. But Deja Vu connects to time, and so does Alexander the Great, because Alexander the Great is a figure from a time in history. So I think that with the exception of 2 songs, it's basically a concept album. And, I have a feeling those 2 songs might still have material in them that would connect. So I think if it's not a concept album, it's about as close as you can get. Do you know what I'm saying? Without being a concept album.
Right. So we could debate whether or not it's a concept album. But even if it is or isn't, it's not a story album.
Correct. That's why I brought it up.
So that is the difference between a concept album and a story album. Going back to Operation Mindcrime, that is both a concept album and a story album. Quadrophenia is a concept album and a story album. A lot of what Pink Floyd does is both concept and story albums, but not all of the time do you have both things. And I don't know if there's a story in Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, which we'll talk about. There's some indication that there's a little bit of a story, but a lot of that stuff is just talking about the kid.
So my understanding is there is sort of a story running through it, but it's we'll get into it. We'll get into it when we do Seventh Son, because I feel like we're gonna eat up some of that conversation. But it's not like Operation Mindcrime or a King Diamond album. King Diamond would be another example of a story. Like, all of his albums pretty much are story concept albums.
So I think Somewhere in Time is a great opportunity to talk about the term theme again. And A Matter of Life and Death does this too, where the underlying theme and subtext of the album is time. So maybe they don't agree with it as a concept album because it is a thematic album. And now we're getting really picky-uni, and I don't mean to. But Matter of Life and Death, God appears on a lot of those songs. And I don't know if Steve's getting religious or if he's rejecting religion with that album specifically. But God has a huge place on that album. And Dance of Death had a lot of misery in it. And he didn't used to do that on albums. I can't stand the Final Frontier, so I'm not even going to talk about that one. But when they did, we talked about this Brave New World. They were just putting together as good of an album as they could because they wanted to apologize for what happened, and they were bringing Bruce back. So I don't think there was room to be clever on that album. Bruce Dickinson did that album, Chemical Wedding. Is that the name of the album?
I think that is the name of the album.
That is a concept album, but it is not a story album. I don't know if you've listened to it, but most of the album is about the tarot, and it is about all these mystical elements that are tied into one another through, not in every single song, but in a number of different songs. If you sit down and listen to it and listen to the lyrics.
I've listened to the album. I can't say that I'm super familiar with the lyrics, but it's a good album. I remember that being
a fantastic album.
One of his better solo albums.
Yeah.
That's a whole other topic, but I think, okay, so with Iron Maiden, just to address the Steve Harris thing, number one, I off the top of my head, I don't know how many songs off of A Matter of Life and Death he wrote, because I know in recent years he's sort of been more open to letting other people's ideas come into the music. It was, he and Dickinson were generally the lead lyricists, but I don't know what the ratio is on that album. But in terms of God and stuff, I feel like it's come up a lot in a lot of their music. I think that's a, something that he's maybe a little bit preoccupied with.
Harris wrote on every single song for Matter of Life and Death.
He wrote, okay.
He wrote on every single one, and only wrote one by himself.
Okay. Did he, does it say lyrically which
it does? Oh, not on the Wikipedia page. It does not. It just lists him.
This is why I miss having the physical copies of CDs, because they usually break things down so much more clearly. It's also why in recent years I just can't even be bothered to learn the lyrics to most of the music I listen to. If I don't have like a handy little booklet, I'm not gonna go.
So I'll be honest, my eyes are going because I'm so old.
Me too.
I can't read the little CD booklets. I have to go online to look up the lyrics.
In all honesty, I probably have the same thing. I have trouble focusing. It's not that my vision is getting worse. It's just that I have trouble reading. You know what I mean? It's just I can't focus as well as I used to. And so I get tired more quickly, and I would rather spend my time reading other things than song lyrics. So my attitude now is, if I can understand what they're saying, I'll learn the lyrics. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I don't know. What would you say is a bad example of concept album? Like what do you not want with a concept album?
What do I not? I think I don't really. What's the name of the band? They did that cover of Holy Diver, Kill Switch Engage.
I don't think I even know them. I don't even
they're
know them.
They're a metal band, and they do a lot of fantasy. I think anytime we talk about power metal bands doing fantasy concept albums, they're always bad, right? I don't think Coheed and Cambria is a metal band, but I hate the story that he's been writing throughout those albums. It is annoying.
I think so. I was thinking about that because we just played a bunch of Unleash the Archer songs, and that's what they do. They do concept albums that are based around science fiction, fantasy. And I was like, why am I okay with this? And I'm not okay with like the way that Rhapsody does it, or the way that some of these other bands do it. Like, not that I hate Rhapsody, but it kind of bothers me the way that they do things. I
don't think it gets in the way with Unleash the Archers. And I don't think it gets in the way with some of these other bands from you enjoying. You can enjoy an individual song. The Sword does it a lot, right? They did Warp Riders as an album. The entire thing is one long story.
Yeah.
But the Three Brujas, that song, and Night City, they are so good by themselves that I don't necessarily need to listen to the entire album to get them, to understand them. And I think if you're giving me something where I have to go and read 70 more lyrics to understand what you're saying in this song. At my age, I just don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Unless it's really, really good. You have to grab me with it.
Yeah. And I don't have enough of a sense of the the quality of the lyrics with Unleash the Archers yet. I have a vague sense, but not enough to like sort of say, well, that would be the thing that really pushed it over the edge. So it must be the music and the tone.
Right.
And all I know is when I listen to them, I feel like they handle it in a way that is much closer to how Iron Maiden used to handle it versus how a band like Rhapsody would handle it. Do you know what I'm saying? It just feels different to me. I don't know if it's maybe that Rhapsody takes it too seriously. Do you know what I'm saying? Or if it's like you're saying, it's just the quality of the music, or if there's just more of an honesty about this is what we're doing. But either way, it doesn't have the same impact on me. But I would kind of agree with what you're saying. I think I don't know. I mean, is it only fantasy stuff, or is it with any genre? Do you know what I mean? Like what if the concept isn't fantasy? What if the concept is noir or science fiction or Western? Does this issue still apply?
I haven't ever heard noir or Western. I think if somebody did a noir album, I would really embrace it, regardless of quality. So because that would be so fun the first time. Science fiction is the same problem, right? It's overdone, and the range of what is defined by science fiction is the same problem I have with fantasy, right? We talked about in the last podcast about Glory Hammer and that song Magnus or whatever the fuck that nonsense.
But let's be honest about why that's bad. That's bad because their made up words are bad. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was the thing that really made it terrible.
Well, and it's power metal with all of that over-the-top synthesizer noise, and all the ingredients were coming, and they're called Glory Hammer, right?
Yeah.
Who didn't stop and say, this is nothing we're doing is right? This entire combination of elements.
So I can tell you, I think that when they sat down, they said Glory Hammer. I think they must have thought that was an amazing name.
I'm assuming English is not their first language. I don't even want to research these guys and find anything out, but I honestly think that English isn't their first language, and that is also another thing that will kill a concept album. Is if you're say Swedish or German, right? So Scorpions are notorious for having horrible lyrics, but you give them a pass because they're German, and Klaus is a great singer, and Rudolf Schenker is a great guitar player, and I never remember the other guy's name. So you give them a pass for a lot of things. But if they were an English band or an American band and singing with those same dumb lyrics, I don't know that people would like them as much.
I mean, I'm pretty forgiving if it's English as a second. Like for example, Candlemass has the album Tales of Creation, which is actually my favorite Candlemass album. And it's all religious themed. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a great song on there called "The Edge of Heaven," which if you want, I could play a clip of, but we don't have to. And but again, a lot of the time, English is I don't think their first language. Generally, you don't notice it, but every once in a while, you notice an odd phrasing. Do you know what I mean? You just be like, well, I wouldn't have described it that way, but okay.
Right, exactly.
But that doesn't bother me. That because I sort of give an A for effort, if you know what I mean. Like if I can sense that effort was put into this, and it wasn't just the person who was just kind of lazily saying it, then I will give him a pass. But I don't know. I feel like with concept albums, I think there's a lot to what you're saying about genre, and it's the fact that these are overused genres, and so you're just never getting anything new. And really, what needs to be done if you want it to have to be refreshing is they need to bring something new to the genre. Do you know what I mean? They need to bring in something that hasn't been done to death, or they need to explore a genre that just hasn't been explored. Do you know what I mean? Like you were saying, like a noir or a wuxia or a I don't know what's another genre. A farce or something that's not just this. The same flavor of fantasy, which again, I think that's another reason, and we're kind of picking on power metal, but I think another reason why the power metal thing annoys both of us is because they don't just want to, it's not like, hey, let's make a great concept album. It's like, we have to make a good power metal album, fantasy album. Do you know what I mean? It's like there are all these boxes that have to be checked off about what makes, and it's never about breaking through and getting better. It's about hitting that mediocre.
It's about checking off back boxes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Sword doesn't sound like a a band that would have concept albums.
Yeah.
They're this sludgy metal band, and so the fact that they do concept albums is just a bonus on top of the fact that they're already really good at what they do. And I think that needs to be the objective. Getting back to Queensryche, I think this is a perfect example, so we're not picking on power metal. The Warning, Rage for Order, Operation Mindcrime, or go ahead.
I was gonna say, is The Warning a concept album?
It is a concept album or a theme album. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly which. And Rage for Order is definitely a theme album, but it's when they get to Operation Mindcrime that they do a concept story album. And I think the fact that they were dedicated to being really good at their craft and then writing about things that they cared about, right? You can tell when somebody's just writing about something because they feel that, oh, we're a power metal band, so we have to have a song about armor clashing. What was that other Hammerfall? That other band? They have 6 songs with the word hammer in them. I mean, how ridiculous is that?
Well, and again, Dio with Rainbow. Do you know what I mean? Like
Dio, look, but again, he gets a pass because he's so good at what he does.
Dio can do anything he wants. Like that's. I have to say, Dio. There was a period of time, like maybe from the late '90s to the early 2000s, when he was getting a lot of flack for being kind of this ridiculous thing from the '80s. Do you remember that when people there was a period where Dio was not getting the respect that he got back in the day or that he gets now.
Right.
Which I found disheartening.
A lot of bad albums.
Well, no, but it wasn't about that. It was mainly people picking on him for his earlier work. Do you know what I mean? I remember, a lot of those morning zoo shows, for whatever reason, he got picked up as somebody that was an easy target if you wanted to look smart and you were making fun of a metal band from the '80s. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I remember we had a show in Boston called Toucher and Rich, and they would harp on Dio all the time, and I used to get furious because. This is way besides the point, but one of the main hosts there was a former history student, and so he used to talk a lot. He sounded a lot like me when he would talk. Do you know? It would bother me that he sounded a lot like me, and that he thought a lot like me, and I felt like he used all of these tools for evil purposes. And one of them was he just it's fine to be critical, right? Like critical is fine. Like you're very critical of things, right? But that's because you want to experience something that wows you. But there are some people who they just make a name for themselves by just criticizing all the time, right? And that's what this show did. And Dio is one of their targets. And so, I'm glad that his reputation is I'm glad that he's not treated that way anymore. I'm glad that he's venerated the way he should be. But getting back to Queensryche, that was so you had talked a lot about Queensryche, and I started looking into them. The Warning is the only album of theirs that I really know because I was trying to take my time with Queensryche because they're not the kind of band that I want to just breeze through their whole catalog. Do you know what I mean? I almost want to experience it in the time. I almost want to have it play out over years. Do you know what I'm saying? As if I was living through it because I feel like it's just that kind of band. So I started listening to The Warning and I fell in love with it, and it's a tremendous album. I mean, I feel like I did such a disservice to Queensryche. I always just assumed they were just a hair band because of Silent Lucidity. Do you know what I mean? It just that and that's actually a good song. Like in hindsight, I can say that's a good song. But back in the day, when Silent Lucidity used to come on MTV or something, I used to be like, oh man, now I'm going to be bored for the next 5 minutes. Do you know what I mean? It just was because I wasn't into that sound.
And that's a bad album, by the way.
But isn't that one of the more popular albums?
It is the most popular because non-Queensryche fans were picking it up.
I get you.
I had the benefit of doing exactly what you're talking about. They were coming out with albums, and I was picking them up as they were coming out. So when Empire hit, one, I was in college and I didn't give a shit about metal anymore, and two, it was made for a different audience. It wasn't made for hardcore Queensryche fans.
Okay.
There's a lot of bad songs on there. There's a song about just being in a relationship with a woman who's never around. And I just thought, how did you get from all this Brave New World, Aldous Huxley, and Animal Farm themes in the background of your albums, identity and computers replacing us, and now you're talking about your girlfriend's not around anymore, and the takeout food got cold. How did that happen? How did that transition happen? And it was really painful to be in that era and see that happening to one of your favorite bands.
Was Jet City Woman from Empire?
Yeah.
I mean, that was actually a pretty decent song, though. You know what I mean? Like I'm sorry.
It was not, but go ahead.
I kind of like that song. Like, I got to admit, I enjoy that. So whenever that song would come on, I would enjoy it. Do you know what I mean? But I can also say it's definitely not operating in the same way as like a song like Before the Before the Storm, or I'm trying to remember the other one that I really like.
Take Hold of the Flame.
Take Hold of the Flame.
Roads to Madness.
That Roads to Madness is great. Now, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page for The Warning, and I'm just noticing, number one, their professional rating thing that they put up is all over the map. But number two, the Rolling Stone album guide only gave this 1.5 stars out of 5.
Yeah, okay.
Which I don't think I'm ever going to trust Rolling Stone for anything anymore. That's terrible. This was an amazing album. I'm surprised that it got such a low rank. But yeah, I don't know. But I can't say. Here's the thing, though. How important is it that The Warning is a concept album to enjoying it?
Not at all.
So
you can enjoy that thing whether you're listening to every single nuanced little lyric. And by the way, because of the way his voice operates, you think he's saying one thing, and he's saying something usually 10 times smarter than what you think he's saying.
Okay.
I to this day, I'm going back and I'm learning lyrics that I thought were one way, and oh my God, he's saying that. Holy shit! Sanctuary is such an amazing song. No Sanctuary. NM156. I could go on all day about that album.
No,
you remove any one song on there, and you still got 10 amazing songs.
I was playing like 3 or 4 songs from this album over and over again for days and days and days. And I wasn't getting bored with them because they weren't following this, like, they were familiar, but they weren't so familiar that they followed all the standard chord progressions. They were going in, they would kind of go in a slightly different direction than you were expecting melodically. I was really blown away by this album. But I don't know. I'm just wondering, like, with certain bands, like with King Diamond, he doesn't work if he's not doing concept albums, almost, right? Like that's sort of the point of listening to. You want to get I mean, I like his individual songs too, but I just mean it would be really weird if he put out an album that isn't a concept album. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't feel right when he does that. Do you know what I mean? Like, and some of the Merciful Fate stuff isn't concept album, right? Like, I think the first 2 albums are not concept, but then by the time you get to what is it, Fatal Portrait, right? Isn't that I think it's Fatal Portrait. Let me double check.
You're asking the wrong guy.
Yeah, I don't want to piss off any of the oh no, that's his debut album. So no, it was, I think Don't Break the Oath has a little bit of concept. I can't remember. But either way, by the time you get to like Abigail and Them and all that stuff, he's in full concept mode, and it's just sort of what you expect. But I'm just wondering, is that like a hurdle for listeners, right? Like, is that, like, I don't know, do you find concept albums maybe a little bit intimidating?
Not me, no.
Do you think listeners do?
I don't know. Rush 2112 is the most popular concept album of all time, right? People love it. People love that story. They love reading those lyrics, following the story about this guy who finds a guitar.
And it's not metal, but what was it? The American Idiot was like a concept album, and that was wasn't that Green Day's biggest album? Like,
well, and it was a good album. I don't like Green Day, and I have to admit that's a good album.
I'm the same way. I can't stand Green Day, but that album whatever reason, it was a decent album.
Yeah.
It's like I think it's one of those things where every once in a while there's like a cultural moment where things just align properly, and that album perfectly captured that moment in time. Just in how it sounded, the themes it was addressing. It had a vaguely Christmassy sound. I thought that album. Don't you agree? It had like a 1950s Chris. Also, they were like blatantly stealing a lot of melodies from existing songs, and nobody ever comments on that. I don't understand why that never gets like there's a Bryan Adams song right in the middle of one of their songs there. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's a rock album too. It's not a punk album like their original work was.
But why doesn't anybody address the musical theft? Like,
I don't know, because nobody likes Bryan Adams. Nobody's willing to die on a hill for him.
But here's the thing: that what that reveals is people do like Bryan Adams, and they just don't want to admit it. Do you know what I'm saying?
I don't know.
I think it's the summer of '69 that they take. There's a passage in there that is just this like the chorus from the summer of '69 or one of the build-ups. And
I don't think I ever really caught that, but you're probably right.
And there's like 4 or 5 things like that in that album. It's like really common. It sounds like it's deliberate, but then there's no one ever comments. So, or at least back in the day, I never heard anybody comment. Because I thought that's what they were doing. I thought that they were deliberately taking all of this music. I think they even take music that I'm pretty sure was like a theme song from a sitcom, and use it for the melody. But it's been a while though since I've listened to it. But yeah, I don't know. That's always bothered me.
I'm glad you got it out. Get it out of your system. I hope their lawyers don't come after us.
What are they going to do? Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, let's play some of their music so they can.
Yeah, then they can come after us. I mean, okay, let me be clear. I believe that those songs bear striking similarity to the.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I really don't care.
But
you don't need to defend yourself.
Well, I mean, we already got like the copyright claims on YouTube. Who knows what lawyerly algorithms have been created for this sort of thing? You know, maybe there's like a libel and defamation algorithm that people use on.
I was going to say that. I said on our next recording we should say something about we should make up a story about a lead singer from a band.
Like, who should we pick? Like, who's somebody that we should lie about?
Well, definitely somebody that's not alive anymore, so they can't sue us.
I think it's more entertaining if it's somebody who's alive, because somebody who's dead. If it's somebody who's dead, it's like they can't defend themselves. Do you know what I mean? If it's somebody who's alive, then they can punch back. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Axl Rose. Like we should say, like Axl Rose was found in bed with a goat. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something like that. And he's somebody that would come after you. And he'd probably take it he would take it way more seriously than would be warranted. Like, nobody cares about this little podcast, and he would dedicate himself.
Hey, Axel, there's this podcast. They got 40 guys listening to it. They said something about your mom. You want to go after him?
Oh, it would be a war. It would be a war. So also, I did want to get back to Unleash the Archers, because we didn't do a third song. And you know, we kind of wanted to help promote some of their material.
The Awakening?
Let's see. Well, the only thing is we haven't played anything from Time Stands Still. That's like all the other albums, we played something from the album.
Then play Time Stands Still. We talked about it earlier. It's a good song.
All right. Should I just jump into the middle, or you want me to go from the beginning?
Yeah, wherever.
All right. We'll jump into the middle here. As soon as Amazon Music. That is the most Bruce Dickinson thing in the world.
So that little background on and on when the guys are singing that's very power metal, right?
That is.
That's something, if they were singing about hammers hitting anvils, you wouldn't be surprised that was how they harmonized.
No, that's true, and I'm not sure the song even needs it, but it doesn't particularly bother me in this song the way it would bother me.
No, it doesn't.
In others.
It doesn't.
Let me just resume this. right, so we're coming on the 20-second mark, so I want to stop it there. But that's, I mean, that to me is beautiful. That is like that is like everything metal should be. Do you know what I mean? Just that the power in the voice. It's hearkening back to British New Wave style of vocals, which I think honestly is maybe the direction that metal should have gone. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I'm really starting to think maybe the reason sometimes newer metal doesn't do it for me, and I think maybe part of the reason is just the direction vocals went. Right. This really works, and again, I mean, wouldn't you agree? That's super Bruce Dickinson what she's doing there, but it's not like she's imitating him. It's just that you can just definitely hear the influence.
No, yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing that always made me laugh about Metallica and Megadeth, right? They claim all this new wave of British metal influences, but none of their lyrics or their vocals match the mentality of that era.
Well, vocally, they're nothing like British New Wave. Guitar-wise, they are. You can hear...
Yeah, guitar-wise, absolutely. But And again, we talked about this before, and there's no fixing that. It's just a minor complaint. It's just that with James Hetfield's voice and with Dave's voice, they're just so flat. They're in this really minor range, this small range, not minor as in key, but this narrow range of music, of sound, that it's not until later when he finally gets some training does James Hetfield even really, I don't know, become a vocalist, in my opinion. He's almost just reciting lines.
Well, he's rhythmic and he's guttural. But the thing is, I like that like there are certain thrash bands. So let's talk about thrash vocals, right? Because that's isn't that kind of where a lot of this comes from? I mean, I guess you could say it comes from Motorhead and bands like that. Like there's proto sound, but this guttural growl kind of really starts to take shape, I think, around thrash, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, it's not like that's not the death voice. Like James Hetfield is not doing death metal, but you can.
Is Overkill thrash?
I think so.
Because they don't have that sound. They don't sound like Tom Araya from Slayer.
But not every thrash band has to. I'm just saying.
Okay, fair enough.
But like, I mean, Anthrax, Megadeth, Testament, Slayer, Metallica, they most of them, that was sort of the signature voice, right?
Yeah.
Like that was the expectation if you were listening to thrash. There were bands that didn't do it. And so,
I maybe that's because they're drawing upon punk, right? And punk does the same thing. There's no range to a lot of punk vocalists.
But also, I mean, they're kind of drawing off of, I don't know, like how much of an influence do you think? Like I know with Megadeth, it's definitely an influence, and Mustaine is very vocal about what an influence it is. With other bands, I'm not as sure if punk was a big like. I don't hear punk in Metallica as much. Do you know what I mean? Especially once you have once the Mustaine stuff is kind of not in the picture anymore.
Yeah, that first album definitely is all punk. But you're right. Yeah. Once they find their sound. On Master of Puppets, punk is completely stripped out.
Yeah, so I don't know, but I do think that with thrash that sound works. It fits because thrash is riff based. It's probably one of the most riff based forms of metal that you have, and the vocals are kind of aping a guitar doing riffs. Do you know what I mean? Like that's what his voice sounds like to me. It sounds like he's using it like a guitar, not like he's using it like a vocalist uses his voice.
If that is true, then that is definitely where all the guttural lyricism comes. Not lyricism, vocals come in later years from band, because that's exactly what the growl is. It's just another musical instrument. It's not really singing.
No, and it's. It's funny. I was re-listening to some Death the other day because of our conversation, and I was noticing the early in Death is I probably should have gone and done some research to confirm it, but I'm pretty sure that they're like the first death metal band or like one of the first, and the vocals sound like death metal, but there's also like a screaming in there. Do you know what I mean? There's like it's not quite what death metal became by the mid '90s or so. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think with a lot of this early vocal stuff going on, from thrash to early death to some of the doom and death rock stuff, there was still sort of a unique signature quality to it. And what eventually happened was it became a type that you had to hit. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you had to you had to get all of, like, there were like 5 hallmarks of what the voice is supposed to sound like, and you were expected to get all of them. Whereas
right.
some of the earlier ones, you might not hit all of them, and you might add something different. Do you know what I'm saying? So, if you, but I would. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I think that it's worth people's time to go back and listen to some, like listen to I think the name of the album is Scream Bloody Gore. I could have the album title wrong, but it's the first Death album. Listen to them, and just compare it to some of the newer stuff. Do you know what I mean? But what were you gonna say?
I think I've lost the thread, but yeah, I've lost the thread. It's okay. Don't worry about it.
That's all right. It's disappointing, but it's okay. We'll
no. I just lost it. I don't even remember exactly what I was going to say. I think, I think that a lot of these bands, there's a problem with our taxonomic approach sometimes. Maybe mine more than yours, because I'm so anal sometimes about, and I'm puritanical about what I think metal should be, that it is a lot of box checking. Right? It's, do they have this? Do they have this? Do they have this? Okay, well then it's not metal. They didn't do all those 4 things.
Oh, I get you.
And I'm guilty of it a lot, and I realize that about myself. But there are people that like Korn and Godsmack and all that stuff, and they're allowed to like it, right? I don't think it's good, and I don't think it's metal. But that doesn't stop people from being able to enjoy it and listen to it and all this other stuff. I think the taxonomic approach, it puts people in these confined boundaries of what they can do if they want to do. And it's probably one of the reasons why death metal and grindcore and all these other new extreme brands of metal are running their course much quicker than traditional heavy metal ran its course.
Yeah, I would agree.
I'm rediscovering the band Satan, right? I haven't listened to them since the 80s. Cruel Magic is the new album that just came out, and I can't believe how good it is, right? Did you listen to it, Cruel Magic?
No, I haven't. In fact, I was going to just say maybe that should be something that some homework I do, because I think that would be interesting to cover. I want to talk about taxonomy in general. I mean, this comes up in gaming too, which we're also involved in. It comes up a lot, and I think number one, you're coming from a good place with it because you're trying to expel Korn from metal, right? Like, there's a reason why there's a reason.
It's a good thing.
Well, there's a reason when you hear Korn, you're like, this sounds like metal, but it's not metal, and why is that, right? And in response to that question, you create these boxes for metal just to figure out why Korn isn't metal. And maybe the problem is then when we take those boxes and we apply them to every other band, we start creating problems. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of like, I'll give a gaming example. Remember when 4E came out? And I don't know your opinion on 4E, so maybe we're about to trot into a big landmine here. But I don't know your opinion on the edition. But when it came out, it was obviously controversial, right? Like, people really liked it or they really didn't like it. It was really polarizing. And I remember I was in the camp that didn't like it because I am a little bit more traditional. And I tried to figure out why, and I came upon a lot of answers. A lot of them were things I found online, like the dissociated mechanic thing. And there were explanations that at the time it sort of fit, right? But then what I noticed is I started taking those explanations and saying, okay, now I'd never want to deal with dissociated mechanics because 4E had them, and a role-playing game can't have that. Do you know what I mean? That's right. It's something that made 4E the thing I didn't like. The problem was, I realized that while it felt like a good explanation for why I didn't like 4E, something went wrong when I started applying it to other RPGs. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And so I realized, I'm now creating this list of requirements that is reducing my enjoyment of role playing. And so I guess what I'm getting at is, I think it's not that the categorization that I was doing was wrong. It's that I wasn't factoring in subtle things like it's about the quantity. Do you know what I mean? It's about, is the game all dissociated mechanics, or is it a little bit? And does it really matter? It's not the fact that it's dissociated that bothers me. It's just the way that it took shape in this game. And I'm using dissociated mechanics as as an easy shorthand to explain something that just on an instinctual level bothered me. It didn't matter that it was dissociated or whatever you wanted to call it. It was just something in this game I just had a natural negative reaction to. Something about listening to Korn you have a natural negative reaction to. I have a natural negative reaction to. And we can find a handy descriptor and make it into a box that we check. But there might be a band that can do that thing and do it well, and it's just that Korn happened to suck at it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So,
well, Gojira does the guttural vocals, but they get a pass with me, right?
Okay.
And they shouldn't get a pass, but they do, because they're so good at everything else. But I don't like Testament, right? You bring him up a lot.
Yep.
I don't like his voice, right?
His voice, let me just say, the voice is the most off-putting thing about Testament, in my opinion.
Right. And I want to like some of their work. I can't stand Pantera. His voice ruins the band. I want to like the work. I can't.
I don't even want to like Pantera. I hate Pantera.
Well, Pantera, that's fair. They're not even...
I've never liked them. I never liked their Here's what I don't like about Pantera, and I know this is going on a tirade. I don't like when I call it douche metal, and I don't like bands that embody that. And to me, they just embody it. Like when I was playing guitar, me and my cousin, we used to call them guitar jocks. There were people that were musicians, but they didn't have like the mindset or attitude of musicians. They weren't artists. They were jocks. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And they brought that attitude to it. It was like playing guitar with a wrestler. And when I watched Pantera, I feel like I'm watching wrestlers on stage play music.
Right.
And I don't have a problem with wrestlers. Like I outside of the context of music, I'm fine with hanging out with wrestlers. Though I think they are the most of all the people involved in combat sports, wrestlers are probably the most douchebaggy and annoying. But I'm fine with them. Do you know what I mean? But in music, I don't want that. I want artists in music. I don't want meatheads. And so I don't know. I felt that Pantera just, and also that dude I forget his name, but the singer, he's just like normally somebody being a terrible person doesn't make me say I don't want to listen to their music. Like I generally don't factor that in to the work. But in their case, I just find it really hard to ignore what a terrible guy he is. You know, not only on top of what he said, but that he's like basically kind of responsible for the death of the guitarist. Like, there's just all kinds of things. So I just don't like that band. But end of tirade. Continue with what you were saying.
I was going on about I lost it there for a second. Yeah. To ride on what you just said really quick. Zach Wilde drives me fucking nuts. And
okay,
his fans are the worst fans in music. I have been to two of his shows actually, because he was an opening act twice, and I've never seen a group with so short a vocabulary and so ready to get into a fight. They just love the fight. But getting back to
and
Pantera,
he's a great guitarist too, I should say.
Yeah,
he's a
sure.
really good guitarist. But
sure.
Now, what is it about him you don't like though? Is it the?
There's just this. I don't know. It's the same reason people don't like Ted Nugent as a person, right?
Well, let's talk about Ted Nugent.
Let's talk about Stranglehold's a fantastic song, but Ted's a douche.
So here's the thing about Ted Nugent. I am about as far on the I'm pretty opposite Ted Nugent in terms of political belief, right? Like I don't agree with virtually anything I've heard him say. One of the troubles I have though is he's a really important guitar player, right? Like you can't play guitar and not listen to Ted Nugent. And one thing and again, I know I just said I can't listen to Pantera because it's a terrible person, but one of the things I see happen with Ted Nugent, because he's deliberately provocative, right? Like he goes out of his way to anger people that disagree with him. Is I see a lot of reevaluations of Ted Nugent's legacy in light, like people will say, he's a jerk, and his music was never good either. And I don't think that's true. I think that and when people go back and they criticize him, they'll often criticize him by focusing on his lead playing rather than his rhythm, which is what he's kind of important for. Do you know what I mean? Is the reason to listen to Ted Nugent is the riffs and like the muscly power that he gets into them. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a, and I guess where I'm going in terms of the douchebagginess is you almost don't get a guitar player like that unless he's a douchebag. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and I know I just said I don't want douchebags in metal, but he's like okay here. Why is it that I can listen to Ted Nugent and I can appreciate the douchebagginess, but I can't listen to Korn or Pantera because the douchebagginess drives me up the wall? I think it's because there's a Jim Morrison quality to Ted Nugent's douchebagginess. Do you know what I mean? There's like an unhinged, this guy is crazy, artistic element to it that isn't present in like Korn or like with Korn and Pantera. I feel like they just want to get drunk and laid. Do you know what I mean? And with Ted Nugent, I feel like this guy is feeding some kind of madness that is not normal. Do you know what I mean? Like there is something wrong with this guy, and that's why his music sounds the way it does. That's why he behaves the way he does. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's sort of more of the dysfunction that I expect to see in an artist than a douchebag. Does that make sense? Or am I just bumbling here?
I think Ted started out as an egomaniac, but he was wild and crazy, and he defined a certain sound for rock and roll. He didn't become controversial and outlandish with his politics until much later.
Yeah, that's
Paul
true.
Anselmo, is that his name from Pantera?
That sounds
He seems to have a disdain for the audience. There's this attitude of, we're just above all of you.
Yeah.
And I think that Ted's never felt like that, right? Despite all of Ted's flaws as a person, he feels like a guy you could go have a beer with after the show.
Well, he feels
I don't even
like
want to be in the same county with Paul.
Yeah, no, like I feel like with Ted Nugent, he will go off about, liberals and stuff like that and say all these things. But if you go up to him and say, hey, I'm a liberal, I disagree with you, but I want to sit down and talk, you could probably have a conversation with him. You're probably going to hear a lot of shit. Do you know what I mean? You're probably going to hear a lot of stuff you don't like, but you could probably have a conversation. I feel like if you tried that with the guy from Pantera, you get punched in the mouth. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the difference.
Right. Right. If you tried to talk to him about anything that he didn't agree with, it would just lead to a fight.
Yeah. You get socked. So I think that's the difference. Also, Stranglehold is, like you said, it's a good, like, Stranglehold,
it's a top 10 song from the 70s.
Yeah. You have to know Strangle. If you don't know that song and you play guitar, you have to go and listen to it. And it's not a song, you could not make that song now. Do you know what I mean? That song wouldn't get made these days. It's only something that could have been made in the 70s.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we've been going on for like an hour and 30 minutes here. Is there anything else you want to bring into the conversation? I know we barely talked about concept albums, but
I think we talked about it enough as a concept. I don't think we got into any specifics of albums that we liked other than a few Queensryche things. I think Judas Priest's concept album about Nostradamus, I think it does not hit the mark the way I thought it was going to. There's a lot of lyrics. Here's the thing. Let me talk about Rob Halford for just a second, because we talked about Dio a lot. I love Rob. I love everything about Rob. He's my first crush, my first vocal crush in metal. They were the first band I listened to after Rush when I was getting into the heavier stuff. And there are times, and I don't give Rob a pass on this, there are times when he writes stupid lyrics. There are times when he writes great lyrics, and there are times when he writes stupid lyrics. And it's one of the reasons I think Iron Maiden always comes out on top in the war between Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, is because you don't hear stupid lyrics from Iron Maiden. Well, they just don't come out of the studio.
I agree with you, but I do want to play devil's advocate, because I know there are going to be people that say, hey, what about 666, the number for you and me? Like, is that the best lyric writing? Now, obviously, there's a tone that they're going for with that song that I think makes it rise to the level of not being bad, but, just to play devil's advocate.
What's funny is you get the impression that it's going to be a satanic song, and it's actually quite corny.
Yeah, it's like a corny horror movie, that song.
Yeah. And so you're right. That's an example, but that's early in their career too. Mm-hmm. You would not, and we've talked about their bad albums. They have 4 in a row, and we're going to do a whole episode about when they went bad. But I think that there are times on Nostradamus, getting back to the concept album, there are times on Nostradamus where they wanted it to be a concept album, and then Rob just phoned in the lyrics, and he's writing about things that had nothing to do with Nostradamus.
Okay.
I'll defend my family and my friends. What the fuck does that have to do with anything about
I see.
the overall concept of the album? Talk about the prophecy. Write a song about a specific prophecy. Talk about dying of loneliness, right? Those are the kinds of things I want to hear from Nostradamus. I'll defend my family and my friends. You could be writing about anybody with that lyric. That's not specific to Nostradamus. That's bad. That's just bad writing. And so when you're tackling a concept album, there's a lot of more box checking you have to do and a lot more editing you have to do. I'm sitting down, I'm writing a new role-playing game, and it's a sister game to something else I've already done. And so I have to be very careful that I'm not just copying things I've already said and done. Mm-hmm. This has to have its own flavor. It can't just be, you know how Master of Puppets is Ride the Lightning Part 2?
Yeah.
I don't want that. I don't want to just keep copying on the same.
I get what you're saying, but I think that's probably the worst analogy you could ever invoke. Just because Master of Puppets is so like, who wouldn't want to make the Master of Puppets a role play?
No,
right?
Absolutely. I'm not necessarily hammering that album. We both agreed it's a top 20 album, that you need to have it for your metal collection. But I don't want to go into the studio. Here's a better analogy. And Justice for All is Master of Puppets.
There you go. So
that's better analogy.
Yeah, that's the analogy you're looking for.
I don't want to go into the studio and write another role-playing game that does the same exact thing the last one did. It has to stand on its own. It has to find its own feet. And I think when you're doing a concept album, you're beholden to the same logic. You can't just, we have this fun Living After Midnight song on British Steel, so we got to have one of those on Nostradamus. No, you don't. No, you already locked yourself into a concept album. You don't get to do a party song.
No, that's actually. I think that's. I mean, it's role playing. It's not music, but I'm doing the same thing. I'm doing a sister game to one of my games, and I just went in the opposite direction. And like, that game had a lot of text, a lot of prose. It was 400 pages, and so I decided to do one that was like 100 pages, and it's got almost no setting detail, and it's all different. And I think you kind of have to do that. For concept albums, I mean, I guess the only thing I would add is, for me, King Diamond was always the go-to person for concept albums for me, because I liked having that story. And if I was to single two albums out that I really liked, it would have been Abigail and The Eye. And The Eye is generally not as well regarded, I think, as stuff like Them or even Conspiracy. But I really liked The Eye. I thought it had some really great songwriting, even though some of the mixing was a little bit gave it a slightly weaker sound than his previous albums. And again, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, but we're going to talk about that another day. So
the theme of this episode was, eventually we're going to talk about this later.
Yeah, well, I don't know. We'll have to go. I think if we go back and assess it, we might be able to pick apart a theme for a title. But it might be difficult. This was a very conversational episode. This was not.
It was.
So I think it was just more about, even started it differently than the other episodes. So that it would.
If anybody wants to blame anybody, by the way, this is all my fault. I woke Brendan up to record because I woke up so hyper and I just needed to do something. And it's just too early to go outside.
Honestly, these are the best kinds of episodes. Like,
right.
It's great. Okay, when you do a podcast, right, you can have a conversation that hits a bunch of points that you've already established and stays on track, right? Is that really more enjoyable than hearing people entertain you with conversation that really goes off the rails and sometimes gets into dangerous ground where you don't know if the person is going to destroy themselves and have to give up social media for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Right? That's I find this kind of conversation, I don't know what you say, long form conversation more engaging than like a tight 45-minute. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, there's value to both, but my preference when I'm listening is I kind of want to hear people work their way through ideas and find, it takes more time as a listener. Like, obviously, if anybody's still listening at the hour and 40-minute mark, which we just hit, they are the most patient listeners in the world, right?
Right.
But the patience is rewarded with those peaks that get hit in the conversation. You have to walk through miles of foothill, but you do get those peaks in those moments. But we'll quit while we're ahead and end it here. And we're going to be back on, though. I know we sometime next week or the following week, we're going to do an episode where we bring Dion in from our Busha Weekend podcast. And we're going to be talking about when good bands go bad, which is a topic we've wanted to cover for a while. And we're also going to be back with Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. And we have some other topics lined up. And until then, we will talk to you later. Your